Good.
Very used the natural sugar on that.
I know, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks good. Now, you did the house across the street, right?
I did.
I remember when you tore down the garage there and you totally, my wife loves that your old house.
It's a cute little house.
Yeah, it looks great.
No Diane Mankey?
No, is that who bought it?
Yeah.
Yeah, your house looks great. It's kind of like mine. My house is good, the yard's still kind of coming along.
Yeah. Right, you're on Bayside.
Yeah, I bought Hank Cole's place, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like never ending work.
Well, house they only done like something.
Yeah, exactly.
Caution. Because I get my house back.
Yeah, she made me do a bunch of stuff.
Good to see you.
The last month, so I'm getting there.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Just, you know how busy you are. Yeah, well, I always tell her, you gotta make the money first before you start.
I know.
I'm doing a 20-lot stratum right now. Yeah, off of Stratum Heights Road. Yeah, Timmy, you know Timmy Mason? Yeah, I know Timmy's working for me. So I got that, I just did another one in Kensington, I got a 36, 37 on that big. So it's pretty busy now.
Yeah, that's keeping you real good.
I got a Barrington one.
Because I didn't put it, they go over my weekly report.
I thought it'd be okay with the economy picking up.
Really, because,
I do that every other weekend.
Whenever he starts, he just throws up a ton of stuff and just keeps going. Seems to work. See, I don't. Yeah.
You work with it years ago.
Yeah. My guys are loyal, though. I use the same guys. My electrician, I got like 17 years.
right, yeah.
Yeah, my plumber, my HVAC guys, they're all long-time guys. You know how it is. But I pay them well. I never shortcut any of them. So,
That's good.
yeah.
Hey, Karen.
That is the second part of payroll because it doesn't
Six
fit
houses
in
under
all
agreement, so I had a
one.
frame, so the framer
Fire
wants to do it, I
department, all
had it up for a while in Madbury.
Okay.
And,
I'll see you at the
So
Bell.
it should say like that.
I got the weather.
Bell Bonds?
Yeah, no, me, no, I just waited for him. And he finally did it, and then,
I see.
can't see.
and I didn't order windows till like 3 weeks ago, so they're finally in, so I gotta get those, my son is sitting out there, and so I can get the windows in. But I got all the plumbing done underneath it, and no, I still stick with regular old. Yeah. I use cheap CertaPeak, same product I've been using for 20 years. Either Main Street Monogram, just hope it holds up well.
I agree.
The house is good. I was watching you come along and we would drive by. It's taking his time away. But he's in the construction. She goes, oh yeah, she goes, now I know why.
Taking his time.
I think she's renting a moral.
She's going through it. She told me they were gonna drop because I had the pool open and I had the temporary fence around her. My kids wanted to swim.
Yes, I bet.
Oh, yeah, they kill you. I have more.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Well, we can see what happens.
Jason Drive?
Got a door to the house. Yeah, I thought it would be.
Yes, yes. Really bad start, but
Ours is like
okay.
4,000. And we already, I mean, every year, so whatever you spend, add another 4,000 or something.
And then you got the agent stays, everything anyway. Right?
Yeah, you got dental and it's still like, they cover. Usually, yeah, my brother was having their wife with my wife. So we're talking like, here we go. She makes good money, so.
Okay.
When the economy's down, she'll help with their business. Good buffer, keep the savings, depleting faster than.
Oh, you guys met him once in a meeting. How you doing, Brent? Nice to meet you. Okay, it's 7 p.m., December 11th. I'll bring the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, starting with a roll call from my right. Paul Sanderson.
Chester Durardi.
Vaughn Morgan.
Jim Ralston.
Chip Huzzy. And we have a quorum, and the meeting is being
Yes.
recorded. Welcome. Jeez, great to look out here and see an audience. First order of business is a public hearing to accept donation from the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 158, for the maintenance of the town gazebo.
This is the funds that were left over by Ian Stromsky with his Eagle Scout project. The funds he raised exceeded the amount that he needed to do the work. So the $281.78 is a check to the town, and we can designate that as maintenance for the gazebo.
Okay. I will entertain any information from the public. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for any comments from the board.
I would move that we accept a donation in the amount of $281.78 from Ian Stromsky.
I'll second that, and can we also have a letter sent thanking him for his efforts?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
The letter has actually already been done.
Okay, next on the agenda is road acceptance. We have two concerning road acceptances and one regarding the Conservation Committee. So I'm going to start with road acceptance on Hickory Lane.
Mr. Catapano is here as the developer. Hickory Lane is at the end of Varden Lane, and he's requested that the town accept Hickory Lane and release the bond. Altus Engineering agrees the pavement is in good condition. However, they require a maintenance bond to be held for a year after completion. Altus has no objection to waiving the maintenance bond because this has actually been down for that length of time. But if the board wants to require the maintenance bond, they recommend $5,000 as a bond.
Okay,
It was paved in September last year.
the what?
It was paved in September
Okay, all right,
And we do have the signed deed.
okay.
of 2016.
Right, of 16 it was
Of
paid.
16 it was paved, so it's been over a year since the final coat of pavement.
Okay. Well, it looks good to me. I'm not a road expert, but we do happen to have one here.
The requested relief is in order in the sense that it's been through the planning board, all accepted, and in fact, we now have the engineer advising that it's ready to go. So based upon that, I would give you a motion to accept Hickory Lane and to waive the maintenance bond that ordinarily would be retained by the town in the amount of $5,000.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that. That's being, just for clarification, to accept it as a town road.
Yes.
Okay. I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
That just needs to be signed by the chairman.
Can I just ask one question? When will you guys start keeping track of the plowing? I just don't want to, if there's a gap, I want to make sure the roads are still plowed, so if it's going to be a few days or whatever, in case,
I said we probably can't let them know by tomorrow morning.
I just want to make sure that, if you guys weren't planning on doing it until the deed's recorded, I want to make sure that it's covered so that people don't end up with a road that's not plowed.
for old time's sake.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Paul can notify the contractor.
Okay.
After this storm, the next one coming up will be a town road.
Okay, great.
Not tomorrow, the next one, right?
Yeah,
No,
we're
it
okay.
could be tomorrow.
The storm will be tomorrow.
Yeah, the storm's tomorrow.
I doubt that we could let the contractor know before, since it's going to start at 3 a.m.
Right. All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I gotta make sure I
The second is Van Etten Drive.
Okay, the developers are here as well as some of the residents for Van Etten Drive. Some of the residents came in today and met with myself and the building inspector with some concerns about the drainage on the road. So I think that we can discuss whether or not, or hear from both sides or whatever.
Okay. Anybody here like to comment?
To speak about water conditions and specifically to the street, yes, I'd be more than happy to do that. I live at 19.
You are,
I'm sorry, I'm Michael Smith. I own the property at 19 Van Etten Drive.
okay.
We have, Troy might be familiar with the house because I bought it from him.
Mhm.
But we have a significant driveway and I'm having still some water runoff coming from the street down my driveway. And I just want it to be known or a concern since it's a big transition of responsibility for that road. That water is an issue coming down my driveway. Photographs, I have, you name it. I had sandbags down at the end of my driveway to keep erosion from happening and, you know, maintaining. Now that the HOA is forming, we now are broadening our concern. So my concern, not only on my property, but at the street as a whole. And I see some issues that should be addressed before any kind of shift should happen. I see the water, I see where it goes. I walk my dog, I see where it goes. And are we absolutely confident that, you know, everybody who is responsible for that road knows what's actually happening?
Okay.
So that is my concern, and we brought this up this morning with Karen, and the rest of the board could speak about some other particulars as well. I don't want to monopolize it, but as a homeowner, I do have some concerns. The curbing that was installed didn't really, you know, decrease the amount of water coming down my driveway.
Okay, okay. Are there any other residents that have concerns? Go ahead.
I'm Joe Fedora. I live at 23 Van Etten. I was curious about the situation with I believe it's the builder's container down there in the recreation area. It's pretty sizable. I don't know what kind of equipment is required to remove it or when it's going to be removed. The builder's finished, he's completed construction on all 19 new homes there. So I actually don't know why that container is still there, but it is there. And I know there was a concern on the part of Altus before the top coating of the paving was done that they suggested that be deferred until all heavy equipment was off the street and all the construction was completed of the houses. So that equipment is gone, but my question is what's going to happen, or what assurance do we have that the street will not be damaged when whatever equipment is required comes in to remove that container?
Okay, all right. I'm going to ask people that have concerns to speak first, and then we'll answer those one by one. Is there anybody else here that has any concerns on Van Etten? Okay, Troy is here. Troy, you got any comments?
The container is going to be taken out this week by David, and it's a ramp truck, just a regular old ramp truck. So it's not a very heavy piece of equipment. What they're really worried about is excavators and things like that, walking up and down the road.
Is that container empty?
It is small stuff, a couple of windows here and there.
Okay, and the drainage?
Dennis Moulton, Dennis Moulton looked at it during the paving and suggested that a berm be put at the top of the driveway. I thought that had been done, but obviously it has not. I can make sure my paver gets out there immediately to take care of it.
Okay.
But that wasn't on the plan, but it's something that needs to be addressed, for sure.
All right.
In looking back at the plans during road construction, Atlas and their plans, I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, But when looking at those plans, it seemed as though the cul-de-sac in which my property is up at, and my property is downhill from all of this, that there wasn't any, it didn't appear in the drawings to recognize any water flow concern beyond Jim Maryland's, what number is that, Jim Maryland's house?
I guess,
90,
must be 17.
17.
I just
Anyways,
ask
just
you
prior.
gentlemen to speak up a little bit.
Yes,
I got two hearing aids,
I'm-
$9,000 sitting here right now, they're not working.
But in my review of the plans for the road, it didn't seem as though there were any indication of what was going to happen with water runoff. That's what, was this we're now trying to fix something that maybe should have been addressed at the very beginning. In my opinion, I'm the homeowner now, and I share with neighbors that, okay, it's a tricky area up there and what to do. I just want to make sure that, when the transition is happening, that this is addressed and we're all assured of this. Around the cul-de-sac, there's some crushed rock that was put in based on the design element and what have you. But plows go through, and now crushed rock goes. And Joe, I hope Joe likes crushed rock because he's going to see a lot of it. And so are the other folks as it goes around, and it's just going to happen. I've got snowbanks that will push up against my trees. All that snow melts and comes downhill towards my house. There's not much we can do, but how do we address the water issue up at the top of that cul-de-sac? We sit up on a hill, and my property is down here. What has happened? I don't want everybody to disappear and it goes, I did have water in my basement over the spring. Granted, I put in a new walkway. I pitched it wrong. I know what water does. I fixed my issue, but I still have water coming down. At the base of my drive, at my doorstep, I had 6 inches of water.
And I live adjacent, and I can see the water cascading down his driveway, so he's not exaggerating it by any stretch.
And it's only 3/4 of an inch of rain, and man, I have ripples coming down. So does curbing need to come up to where my driveway is and somehow kick it away? I just don't know what that would do. But
Are you against the berm?
I guess-
Were you there? Were you there when
I wasn't
Dennis?
there. That's why I was trying to capture everybody there
Gotcha.
because I wasn't there when the paving was done, because I would have been out there.
Well,
and said,
the paver and the engineer representative, Dennis.
Yeah.
He said that the berm would be the best situation there for the water to go across and in over towards the curb. Well, not the curb, but
The pond,
I'm sorry,
the pond?
the cul-de-sac. Excuse me. So beyond your driveway.
Beyond the, right,
Towards the
between Joe, right.
Right.
Onto my property.
That's where the water is designed to go.
That's what
It
I
was
said.
designed that way, to go between your house and Peter's house, through that back swale, and out to the detention pond, excuse me.
All right. That was the sense that I was getting.
And it was also
from
designed to
that
go
way.
down that driveway and into a swale that also went out back. If you look at those drainage plans, it shows the water going down that driveway,
My
around the back, and then, because there's a swale that goes around the back.
It's a lot of water. It's just.
I agree, but, we can put the berm in it, are you against the berm?
What does that berm look like, and what will that look aesthetically?
It's just like a speed bump, yeah.
Oh, a speed at the end of my driveway?
Yeah.
That'll be comfortable. We just fixed, I think, the end of Manhattan onto 33. Thank God there isn't the lip there now. That's nice and somewhat smooth, I think, at this point. I don't really want a ski jump at the end of my driveway. I just want, there's a pitch. When you pave a road, you pitch a particular grade. I don't know if anybody's an engineer here, clue me in, but I assume that there's a bit of a grade to the road. I don't think I need to have a bump at the end of my road. But maybe that pavement could have been dispersed a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I just want the set of eyes that need to be looking at this, look at it before it's all said and done.
Okay, well, I think, I've known Troy for quite a while, really amiable guy. I think, do you have his number where you could contact him?
I don't know if that's appropriate.
To contact him?
I'm not responsible for the road and the design of the road. I don't want a speed bump. I have an 80-year-old mother-in-law that lives in the duplex with us, and, you know, it's hazardous enough getting out of Van Etten Drive onto 33. I don't want another hazard getting into my driveway. If you come up, and I have pictures, I have video, as it comes from my neighbor's house, all the way going down Van Etten Drive, the water is going down. It is getting into manhole covers. There's no curbing on the other side. That's the way the designers thought that would be the case. But if you look, there's water going right down on this guy's lawn on the opposite side of the street. But when you come up towards the cul-de-sac, now you enter my driveway. The water comes from hers right down my driveway, and it comes right down. So I'm just going to change the pitch of the road a little bit. I don't really want to bump at the end of my road, I'm sure you could feather it in somehow, maybe. But Troy, I don't know what that will look like, is how big of a berm are we looking at?
I probably 2 or 3 inches, but we have to be careful redirecting water. That water was designed to go down that, alongside of that driveway, behind the house, into that filter pond out back.
So you're using my driveway as an access?
No, it's supposed to go down the grassy area.
It doesn't go down the grassy area, it goes down my driveway.
It goes down pretty much all the way across the driveway. I can see it from my front
And
door.
just for instance, my father-in-law, who's since passed away, was suffering a heart emergency, and I had cleared my driveway, but the water runoff created such a slick condition. I had this town of Greenland with their Sanders. I had an ambulance EMT who took out a knee when he slipped on the driveway, another ambulance for him. I had 2 ambulances, cops, fire trucks, you name it. That was drama coming down my driveway, and delay of emergency. No, I don't want water coming down my driveway. That's why I'm sitting here saying I don't want any more water coming down my driveway. As an engineer, I'm not supposed to have water coming down my driveway. So that's where I stand at that. The solution, what is it? What are the solutions? And I'll consider them.
Well, it seems to me that what Troy was proposing, a 3-inch berm or something, might be I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not an engineer either.
Can I just say that was Dennis Moulton's idea, not mine.
Okay.
He's the engineer that's been overseeing this whole project from Jump Street. And everything is out as per plan.
Okay. Bonnie,
Well, okay, when it went through the planning board, there was a plan that had been drawn by John Shagnon, who designed the original. And now that the thing has actually been installed and the houses are in, apparently there's a field condition that's something different. Okay, and Dennis Moulton, who is an engineer with Altus, our town reviewing engineer, has given some sort of a solution, but that solution's not in writing in his report to us. And I think what we need to do is have him give us that solution in writing. So this gentleman can be assured that the field condition is going to be corrected. You are absolutely right when you say it's important that we maintain what's called an open drainage system, not a closed drainage system on that road. By closed, it would mean the traditional old way of putting it into catch basins and then a pipe that goes somewhere else. We don't do that anymore. We do open drainage and we infiltrate as much as we can on the lawns. So that's exactly what Troy described to you, and that's exactly the way that it was designed. But I think that we need Dennis Moulton from Altus Engineering to give us a proposal for what's going to correct your condition so that you don't have those bad conditions on your driveway.
If the water was coming down and dispersing across my lawn, my lawn would probably love it.
And that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think maybe, let's see what the recommendations are, but it could be very well, maybe I need a little bit of a curbing on that edge or what have you. I don't know. If you see, run a sprinkler and you'd see.
No, I know, I lived there when the water was
It's right there at
coming
the
down.
corner, right there at the
Yeah.
corner, at the end of that driveway, it just comes right down, and it comes right down the driveway. If we could somehow get a bit of a curve,
The curb's not gonna do anything.
it might even encourage the water to come down the driveway.
Yeah.
more than-
Right, because at probably 75 to 100 feet towards 33, going down Van Etten, it starts pitching your way. It's designed to pitch that way and not go in the catch basins. You go into the, into the filter pond out in the back behind your house.
But that goes between Joe and I's house.
And no, it's supposed to go down alongside of your driveway.
I need clarification on that. I don't know why my property has to be the catch basin to water coming off the street. I didn't, that wasn't part of any plan that I saw when I purchased my home. And I don't really want, I've spent thousands of dollars landscaping and a lot of hard work, and I don't want my lawn dug up anymore or any more damage done. I just want to control the water. So I think your recommendations probably.
Yes, and I don't know, did any part of the landscaping change your plan? In other words, did a swale get filled in or something like that?
Well, I don't know, but I know you did some, at the very corner, you did some hardscaping there. That's supposed to be an open swale, treated water, and to go down to the back.
No, actually,
Is that still open?
that's still, in fact, I created a rock garden, and there's literally whatever water is coming down off of my property can go down wherever it wants to go on my property.
Didn't you have sandbags to divert the water onto the pavement?
But no, to keep it onto the driveway, because it was washing away and I had to repair.
Right, because that's supposed to stay grass. It's supposed to be a grassy swale so that water.
No,
is treated.
that is more effective now than it ever was, and it was, that was not identified as a swale for that cul-de-sac, and I'm not gonna.
And I guess that's why I'd go back to my original suggestion to please have Dennis Moulton, who is the engineer, take a look at it and propose a solution for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's just leave it at that and let's take it from that point on. All right, and see how that works out for you, all right?
Thank you.
Okay. So, do we want to, a motion to accept Van Etten Drive as a town road?
Well, if we were to accept it at this time, that means that we would start plowing it immediately and these would become town problems. And we don't know what the extent of what Dennis Moulton might tell us. So I don't want to defer this for a long time, by any means, but I'd like to defer it to find out what the report is and what the likely cost might be. So that at that point, we can either get it corrected or have enough money held aside so it can be corrected when conditions warrant.
Okay. Then, your motion is to table the
Yes.
motion, okay?
We'll just defer to the next meeting,
Yeah,
which is December 26th.
right,
To allow Altus to come back and tell us what should be done.
okay. So I have a
And
motion.
obviously give Troy a chance to talk to that.
Yeah,
Do what now? I didn't hear what you said.
I said, hopefully by December 26th, our next meeting, we'll have the report from Altus and your response to whatever they say to you.
okay, so I have a motion to table
I'll second.
the acceptance of Van Etten Drive as a town road until the next meeting.
Second.
The motion, second, all in favor?
Now, what about the bond reduction?
How about the what?
The bond reduction, isn't that on there too?
What bond do you have right now?
We have a $130,000 bond.
Oh, okay. And Altus was ready to have it down to 2,000, so obviously that's an important issue for you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd have to guess that if we were to allow $100,000 of that bond to be dealt with as satisfied and leave $30,000 aside,
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I
we
don't
give
see a problem
substantial
with
relief, but
reducing.
hold enough aside to do corrective. Is that fair?
I think it's, yeah, I do.
Okay, then
Consider the circumstances.
I'll supplement my motion to permit a reduction in the amount of the outstanding bond by $100,000.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So moved.
Thank you. And ladies,
See you next meeting.
Okay, next item is Laura Berigo, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. I guess, Laura, you'd like to discuss hiring an intern over the summer? Is that-
I actually have a couple of things that I'd like to talk about, and that intern is kind of a possible solution to one of our issues.
Okay,
So with the Conservation Commission over the last few months, we have been trying to look at the conservation land in town and get an idea of what has been identified and cataloged sort of in our natural resources inventory and what may have changed. As part of that, I was also looking at the trail area and one of the open space areas that's at the end of Van Metten Drive, so that's a timely issue. Maybe I'll start with that. And also as part of that, the conservation members have gone and looked at the Falls Way conservation easement. So over 3 different time periods, we've pretty much covered the conservation area in Falls Way. So I'm going to sort of run through a list of a couple of these, and then I'm going to ask you for your approval of something at the end, just so you know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So on Falls Way, we walked through. We haven't covered that for a long time. You may remember that a few years ago we were looking at the Atlantic White Cedars, and we went out and got permission to bring someone on from UNH to advise us on that. We've put up on some of the little saplings that were getting eaten, we put up protective barriers. So we checked those. We've checked them a couple of times, but that's all we've done on that before. Lo and behold, many of them are still there. The ones in the sunshine are quite happy. The ones in the shade are not so happy, and some of them have died, so we've kind of replaced that, but at least we're watching to see what's going on with that. So we did that, and then we went through all of the easement, which really is in everybody's backyard, through that whole Falls Way. And that raised a couple of different things. One, we wanted to make sure that the property boundaries were still marked. In large part, they are, but not 100%. And we only found a couple of the stakes. So most of the markers were, markers that are on a tree trunk. They were easy to see and easy to spot where they were. There could be more of them. We found only one easement infringement that we know of. And as part of telling the abutters that we were going to be out there, we noted in one of our letters that the easement conditions are posted at Town Hall, and Charlotte's told me that at least 2 of the abutters have come and picked those up. So that's a way of, again, asserting our easement rights and educating people. So the one problem that we identified was one household that appeared to have cut a dirt bike, including a couple of little bridges and an area that was being used. I can't say that I heard a motorized vehicle or saw it, but we knocked on their door and said, we've noted this. We don't know exactly what it means just yet, but we've noted it. And they were one of the ones that picked up the easement deed, which says no motorized vehicles. So we may want to follow up on that. Otherwise, we did not. We hit all the big parts of the easement, and we didn't find any other problems. That and the Weeks easements are the only ones we've covered. We're going to try and cover some of the other easements. As I was going through the natural resources inventory and trying to look, there's some areas like on Moulton Drive, on Valhalla Drive, where we have conservation easements that maybe should be looked at to see if they can be made more valuable to the community. So that's kind of a little star there. Another little star, I think probably the next easement we're really going to look at is Packer Bog. And that's because in the natural resources inventory, Packer Bog is specifically identified as having rare and important species. It's an important wetland. And Fred Borman came through a few months ago. He was a forester. He's working on another project, working with towns to identify some of their lands and their forest lands. He said you really might, even though it's a town-held land, you really might want to put a conservation easement on Packer Bog. Do something that protects it more than just being town-held land. So I'd like to see what your feedback might be on that, whether I should pursue that idea, if you need more information, what you'd like to do with that. So that's Falls Way and Packer Bog, and then some of these other things. The next sort of category of property is at the end of that Van Etten circle is a piece of land, so not the wet meadow down at the bottom, but it's a piece of land that the town took because it's right next to the land that we're building a trail on, that is designated as open space. One of the abutters drew my attention to that land and said, what are you guys going to do with this? It is currently kind of an open meadow. It's pretty. It's nice. It doesn't have a lot of invasive species on it yet, although I saw some autumn olive coming in. The land next to it, our trail land, is heavy with invasive species. And I didn't make quite enough copies, but I got Matt Tarr to come, you've already seen this, to come and look at both that open space area with me and to walk over the trail with me, also with another forester. Oh, here we go. And he basically is the professor at UNH that focuses on open meadow types of habitat. And he also has done an awful lot of work on invasive species. And he basically said, don't try to fight these invasive species, which should be a relief to the town since I've been bugging, been trying to highlight invasive species. He said Greenland is so full of invasive species and we know how they travel. It really would be, except in maybe certain targeted areas, it would really be a waste of our time. Instead, kind of look at it and realize that this is a different type of habitat. It will mature over time. The New England cottontail rabbit is a species that is trying to be protected. Some of our multiflora rose and glossy buckthorn species are so thick, it's almost perfect New England cottontail rabbit habitat. So he was going to draw that to the attention of the group that is working on that to see if maybe they would like to help us adapt the management to that. We might be able to get some help with that. But he also talked about that open space land. And he said it would not take very much at all to manage it, to keep the invasive species out of there, and to keep it as an open space that I think the abutters would likely support. And I was going to propose that the Conservation Commission take on the responsibility of managing that and keeping it as open space, which means that we would have to have a budget that would let us mow it, maybe half of it 1 year and half of it the second year. So it's only about 7 or 8 acres, and if we keep the shrubs down, it's easier. So I would like to see if and he's got some advice in there, and he's willing to work with us on that. So that was one of my main ideas, to see if you would like us to take that on. Otherwise, it's open space for the land and for the town, and you're going to have people asking, what are you going to do with it? It needs a management plan to at least be able to respond to the abutters on that. And then coming out of all of this are 2 issues. The Conservation Commission, as it is currently constituted, there's 4 of us. So everyone else here can listen to this. We need more people on the Conservation Commission, and we need people who have the time and the capability to go out and walk our conservation lands. which means getting on your mud boots and being able to climb under and around brambles. I'm not looking at you in particular. But I think that we're trying to raise the profile of the Conservation Commission by taking on additional responsibilities. But I think we may also want to do what Hampton has done, and at least one other town, which is hire a summer intern who has, in one case, they hired a vet who had the GPS and the background knowledge to go out there and walk those conservation lands, and he got it done in the summer. And all of the conservation lands were walked. So I talked to the person in Hampton who had put that together, and she said the first year she actually got a little mini grant from the Davis Foundation, which is over in Kittery, I believe, to come up with the money for that intern. It proved to be successful enough to the town that after that the town said, yes, we'll give you a little bit of a budget to do that. So that's something to think about that I'd like your feedback on.
Did you get an estimate of what that budget is?
Yes, and I can give that to you. I don't have it with me right now.
Did you have a ballpark?
One person at about, say, $13 an hour for 20 hours. So something around that range.
Okay,
So
for the summer.
For
So
the
it'd be
summer.
similar so probably $6,000 or so, which is what we do for our summer part-time labor.
Mowing, a possible intern, again, we might be able, I seem to think that she got $1,500 in her first grant.
Okay.
So 6,000 may be way top end.
Okay.
So let's bring that down. And then the third thing I would like to do is we have a little bit of money in our current budget for education. And I would like to, I've reached out to Brian Fogarty with the Boy Scouts, and I think that we can put together a really nice little program that would benefit the Boy Scouts to go through town and label all of the drains that drain to the bay are drained to a creek. That means that you'll have the Boy Scouts out walking around. They'll get to know their town. They'll understand water, and they'll understand this idea of being responsible for what happens. They'll understand a little bit more about stormwater. I thought we could do that, and maybe as part of that also take some of our properties and label them. I think some of our conservation lands are not labeled at all as conservation land. And the piece of property that our trail is on, we are still working on identifying exactly where the property borders are on a very small segment of that trail. But that made me realize that the back end of that property we haven't walked. And so I don't know whether the back end that bumps up against Stratum is really marked as town conservation land. So I would like to have signs that, and I think we can possibly use part of our conservation budget, although it's small, to pay for those signs and go around and put boundary markers up on all of those conservation lands. So that's my three things. Open space on Van Etten, can we take it on to do the mowing and be responsible for that? Can we possibly look towards doing an intern to help us with our conservation easement walking, a very specific thing? Packer Bog, are you interested in considering protecting that more and then doing a boundary? And that's just buying, and the signs are not very expensive. And we might be getting some signs for the trail too.
Okay. Chip, do you have anything to add?
Biggest problem with us taking on more is we need more help. 4 people, we're running ragged. I just don't want the burnout. I think Laura's taking on a lot of this and we're just gonna burn out, so we do need help. The bigger thing would be if you wanted to do something, most of you are from Van Etten, you wanna do something just in that area, that's fine. You don't need to travel with us over to Bacchus Falls if that's not interesting. It's your own backyard, you may wanna get involved with something like that.
And that's I think I'm gonna be meeting with some of the abutters and I can talk to them about that, and they might be interested in also, there might be some of them that we can at least reach out to them and say, eventually we're gonna need help with trail maintenance. So, that's where you need town people to get involved.
Two of the abutters are here, two of the four abutters, and I think we haven't had an opportunity to have extensive discussions yet. Michael Smith and I both were in that area. We've just started to have discussions with the other two neighbors, but I think there's a general consensus that everybody's concerned about it and wants to keep it in a natural state. And
Natural state is in a meadow, or natural state as it'll grow in?
Well, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and your comments regarding the aggressive, what's happening just in the conservation land, directly behind my house, I have almost equal sized property, that's the retention pond. It looks like a big whole lawn, but I take care of that. I mow that, and that's a retention area. But just on the other side of that berm is the conservation land, which you go in, 20 yards, and you're immediately, you were trapped. Then there's the meadows that you're speaking about, which are absolutely beautiful, and they're untouched. And you said you saw a few things within the meadow, but if that could be managed in a way that kept it natural, it's absolutely beautiful. It doesn't need to look like the Wentworth Country Club. It's natural, it's a meadow, and how to care for that responsibly. The rabbits, you spoke of rabbits. I have never seen any rabbits, but this year, they're out in full force. I have a German Shepherd puppy that just thumped the butt.
We might be talking to you about those puppies.
But, they're everywhere. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I love to see the turkeys. I love to see the rabbits. I had a bobcat walk right out in my backyard, which was stunning. I have deer out in my backyard, and it's a treasure, and we're blessed to be able to be in that development. That's why we're here, because we love it there. And we want to keep it natural, and we want the impact to be minimal, both for the homeowners and for the community that's enjoying those trails, because with this new fallen snow that we're on, some of those trails that I did my first walk through just this past weekend were just beautiful. But I don't want anybody up at the end of those streets doing crack or heroin up at some vacant lot, that's gravel road that anybody can just, this kind of thing can happen in Greenland, and it's happening. So how can we, create these beautiful spaces, use it responsibly, and maintain it responsibly?
Well, we wouldn't put a path in that particular area.
Yeah.
It would be just a meadow, and it would just, the suggestion is that it would just be mowed once in a while. Then you can, the native wildflowers will come in, you'll get your brown birds, you'll get your hawks. Hopefully if you get goldenrod and milkweed out there, you'll get butterflies. It can become a really nice place.
It is a pretty area up there.
Yeah.
It really is. Jim, you have any comments?
Not really.
I think mowing it once, twice,
Yeah.
here and there. Like you said, half one half one year, half the next, alternate.
There's-
Keep it down, keep it under control. Paul, leaves you options.
Yeah, obviously, Fish and Game, we do a lot of habitat management of that type. What I've certainly learned is that you don't do any of this mowing in the spring, because that's when birds are nesting. You have to do it later in the summer, so it's one time in August or so.
I think that's probably all, most, but that would be my sense, that to sort of answer the question you raised, Karen, we don't want it to look like a golf course. Maybe, some mowing with some interval, just to help keep some things under control, but not like on a regular basis. Just
When a forester takes a look at it, they can tell you if you should go in there and either do a treatment with a brush hog or a Bronto. In order to do that, the Bronto is the heavy equipment where you go in and take down trees if you need to, in order to set up successional habitat. Doubtful that there are any New England cottontails in there, more likely that they're eastern. The New England Cottontail project is actually over on the base. And it's ironic they're using the nuclear bunkweed. As we call it, bunny wabbit habitat.
I talked to him about that specifically,
Mhm.
and he said, in general, they think, despite the habitat that they've got on peas, they're enclosed in these wire cages that they had to protect them from the hawks, so they weren't just sitting there as bait for the hawks.
It takes really dense
called
cover
killing
for them.
Right.
It takes very dense cover for them to survive.
But he was intrigued because he said, generally, it's a little bit west of here, but we happen to have that impenetrable,
Yes.
if you go out on the trail and get, as usual, your margins, and I'll stop, your margins are where the densest problems are. You get back in, you get more trees. But there are areas where it's really dense, and dense enough that it would be, which is why he said maybe the eastern cottontail folks might be interested in
Yes.
looking at it.
As to your other points, when it comes to stormwater, we have a budget already for stormwater, so that there is a budget in order to handle that remarking project that you're talking about. Personally, I'm opposed to putting conservation easements on town-owned property simply because it's town-owned property. We can protect it, from a conservation point of view, but I'm unwilling to burden something on a permanent basis that way. I see no problem with managing it that way, but I just don't want to burden it with a permanent conservation easement for something that's owned by the public.
The only one that I was suggesting doing that for, we do have some land that's designated conservation easement that the town holds already, and we probably should mark that as such. The only one I'm suggesting adding a conservation easement to is Packer Bog because of its special value. And to not have that, for the town to basically say, we're not going to consider doing anything else with this. And I don't need a decision tonight, but I think that it would be worth really looking closely at that because it's particularly valuable wetlands. And we all know that our wetlands are going to be stressed, not only by development, by changes in groundwater. We don't know what's going to happen with Packer Bog. It may become a lake. I'm exaggerating. But with groundwater pressures, I just would like to put it out there as something for the selectmen to
A
think about.
discussion to have. And then, I don't know within our particular budget proposal whether we can accommodate this proposed intern in some fashion or not.
1,500 we can,
Yes.
because that could take that. Stormwater is budgeted at 15,000. We're going to need a substantial amount of that to do the notice of intent to the EPA this year. But there is some flexibility with the stormwater.
And certainly education for that is the type of education that they're talking about. So
Correct.
It's very compatible.
I can tie it right into the stormwater permit.
Okay. So actually, the activities they were undertaking could be helpful to us in meeting our duties under permit. Okay, so if we looked at it that way, then we may be able to accommodate some of the requests within our existing budget.
Okay, i.e. the drains to the bay, the signage for that, and an intern, and we can talk about exactly specifically what we'd like that.
And also, many of the educational objectives that you talked about are the same educational objectives as the stormwater permit
The
requirements.
MS4, we might be able to, yeah. And I think, Falls Way. So you have this one house that possibly has a bike path on there. Do we want to, I don't believe that it would be a letter from the Conservation Commission because it's town land. I'm wondering if there needs to be, if someone else needs to look at it besides me?
It would be the building inspector getting the information back to the planning board because it's a planning board condition that imposed the easement.
Okay, so building inspector.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it. Oh, and I've got an okay on figuring out how to mow, and we will maybe I need to let you know if we need a bump in our budget for the mowing, or will that come out of something else?
If you need a bump, we're going to need to know that bump amount quickly. We're in that process like Thursday night. So.
Yeah, for the conservation.
I think it's safe to say, Paul, you don't have the equipment that would do a brush hogging.
No.
It would be a rental?
Yep.
How much per day?
I don't know,
He
500.
doesn't necessarily have time either.
I was gonna say about $350 a day.
Okay.
That include the machine and the hog.
And a person?
No, that's just for the machine and the brush off.
Right, if it's done late August, that's actually the time when the,
They're really
Fields on-
busy, you would have to reserve it
right, but it's the time that you have the actual more time to do it, is that hot, the end of
late
August,
August, yeah, we slow down a little bit.
before the leaves start.
Okay, so it's probably a 3-day project,
I don't know how much,
With
I've never
budget.
walked it.
but just from a budgeting standpoint, if you budgeted in $1,200.
Okay.
And that's machine rental time.
Okay, and then that way it's about 7 acres, but there's one section where you may remember there's a steep bank going down to where our trail actually starts, and that may need a little bit more, so I think this will more than cover both of those if we need that.
If it's really steep, you're not driving a brush hog down.
Right.
Well, it depends what type of tractor it is, what it's connected to.
Exactly, yeah. And that may be where the Bronto would be involved.
Right, and I think with that 1,200, we might have, say 2, I'll figure out.
I was gonna say, the brush hog is that price, a Bronto is considerably more. Considerably more.
We don't really need a Bronto, we don't have overhead that we're going after,
Okay.
so we'll figure out something. Okay, that's great, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. And Laura, I think you're doing a great job there. I really appreciate the effort and the work you're putting into this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's move on to approval of minutes. From November 27th meeting. Does anybody have any comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of Monday, November 27th, 2017 as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. In the road business, we have a Coakley, or we may have a Coakley update, or don't
Right,
we?
we don't have much to speak of with that. I'm actually working with the secretary over at Portsmouth now to set up a meeting for early January with Mr. Sampson and I and the Portsmouth attorneys on alternate ideas or ways with the water department that the water can be run to that area. The EPA was scheduled to be coming in tonight to update the board on the community technical advisor program. That's been postponed into January.
Okay.
The only other update I have is, I can tell you that at Fish and Game, we met with the Seacoast Cancer Cluster folks up in Concord last week, and they are heavily involved in dealing with whether fish in Barry's Brook, in fact, have been contaminated and how they would be tested. And EPA has put out a draft of a testing protocol for how that would occur. It is an extremely difficult and expensive item. Every one of those tests, by the time you have collected the fish, done the necessary lab work and processed it, it's around $4,000 a test. We have lots of legislation in Concord that we're dealing with, including testing every stocking site that Fish and Game maintains over the state. There's 2,100 of them, and so the fiscal note came back at $7.2 million for the first year. But in Barry's Brook, there's a lot of consideration of this. We do know that CLF tested oysters and they came back at a non-detect, which is good news. So those discussions continue about impacts upon fish.
Okay. All right. All righty. Next is the Great Bay Drive West. Before we get going on this, there was new information that was brought to my attention that I wasn't aware of. And I think it's important that we all need to read the minutes of the town meeting of March 9th, 2010, where it states, to see if the town will vote to accept Great Bay Drive East and West as town roads in their current condition upon receipts of deeds releasing all rights, titles, and interests from all current owners of record at no cost to the town and acceptance by the planning board. That I knew nothing about. I wasn't a selectman at the time, so I knew nothing about that. So the big question is, has anybody from any of the owners gone up before the planning board and presented this?
I can tell you at last Thursday's meeting, I asked Charlotte to research that question, and then I asked the individual members, many of whom have long years of service going back before that time. And none of us could find any record of it or could have any memory of having any of those discussions.
Okay.
Right,
So-
and I did the same research, and the only thing I found was the triangle area that Mr. Wendell talked to the planning board about.
Which
But I
is on east, not
Right,
west.
but I could find nothing else.
All right. So what this tells me, anyway, is that the association needs to go before the planning board and gain acceptance before we can do anything. It's out of our hands, totally. That is what the town voted on. I will, if anybody would like to mention anything about that, you can have your say, but as far as I'm concerned, until this goes before the planning board, the Board of Selectmen really can't take any action whatsoever.
Right, I
Go
would
ahead.
recommend that if the
Go ahead.
board chooses to continue plowing, that we vote as they have been over the past several years to designate Great Bay Drive East and West as emergency lanes for winter maintenance.
Right, I will entertain that motion. Go ahead. Mr.
Leonard Schwab, Great Bay Drive West, there is no association. The association died years ago. Years and years and years ago, that's why I don't know who should go in front of the planning board.
That's a good question. Maybe everybody that's on Great Bay Drive West should go before the planning board.
Okay, I guess,
I don't know what else to say. Honestly, it's out of our hands.
could that 2010 motion be emailed to all the residents?
Oh, absolutely, it was an amendment made at town meeting.
And to the brackets as well?
Yeah, and I just handed it to them, actually. It was an amendment made at town meeting that I didn't remember having, that it happened. That discussion at town meeting was one of those convoluted
Yes.
on, and it was brought to our attention. I was away most of last week, and it was brought to my attention on Friday.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
I have one thing. 8:45 on Saturday night, I'm sitting there having a beer with my family. No snowplow. Barassa's had to plow from Brian Beck's all the way down to Leahy's, which is town road. It was accepted in 1948. And then I pay for the remainder. This has been going on for 6 years. Every winter I bring it to attention, nothing gets done. Dick Weeks, Frank Beck, Frank White, Freddie Barassa, David Barassa, none of them had any problem getting the big plow in and plowing to Leahy's. We're not asking you to plow the private road. But in 1948, that road was accepted. I have been paying for plowing and salting, and Brian can attest to this. When they plow Bayside Road, they leave a big pile of snow right at the base of the hill. I've had to hire excavators to get in there and remove it. I mean, I'm getting sick of it. I complain 3 or 4 times a year. Nothing ever gets done.
My only comment to this too, Karen, is this is not the first time this has been brought before this town. It starts in 1812, and I have the documentation for it. The brackets passed over the road to the town in 1812. They did it in the 1840s. They did it in the 1910s. They did it in the 1950s. 1992, it is on a selectmen's meeting. There are 14 roads that get accepted. Somebody in their infinite wisdom thought all 13 were good except one. Except one. Reason being, I was told, because the brackets are still alive. So we don't have to do that. At the same time, the Downses, a road, Downs Avenue, they too were alive. But that didn't matter. I am so sick of this, I could scream. Every time I turn around, this town is ungrateful, will not take the road, and throw it up in our face. How many times do I have to come to these meetings and be told, well, you're different? I'm not different. I'm a citizen of this town, and I get treated like a second-class citizen. Thank you. Have a nice evening, guys.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, again, my suggestion.
By the way, we gonna be plowed this winter?
We'll talk to Mr. Jones tonight.
I would really like somebody with a plow and not a pickup. I mean, this is costing me a fortune. I don't think the town wants me to give the bill for what it's cost.
I'm gonna
to
back
the
him.
grasses for the last 6 years.
I gotta back him. We spoke, 4 or 5 times last winter alone about it.
Well, I don't know how you're speaking with him, if it's ESP or what, but the message isn't getting through, Paul.
He isn't getting through to it.
All right.
Okay,
Okay, we'll see y'all later.
that being said, I'll entertain a motion to designate Great Bay Drive east and west as an emergency lane to be kept passable for emergency vehicles for the year 2018.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda. Otherwise, is there any other old business anybody would like to bring up? No? Okay, review of the town administrator's report. I know the DRA has confirmed the town's equalization rate for 2017 at 86.6%. So Karen, can you just give us a brief rundown on how that affects the residents?
What it means is 2018 is our revaluation year, which we know. So it's an indication that property values in town will likely increase 15%. We need to be at between 90 and 110% for revaluation. The goal is you should be at 100% each reval, each 5 years. Because property values are selling approximately 15% higher than we have them assessed for, property values will increase approximately 15%, not flat across the board. We may find that the smaller ranches are only increased about 8%. We know the very large homes have not increased at all. And a lot of it is the middle of the road things. So each category or each strata is looked at individually based on sales. And overall, the increase will be approximately 15%. As a result, it doesn't mean the taxes go up 15%. It means the tax rate itself then correspondingly goes down based on whatever is spent at town meeting.
Okay.
So this isn't the year to say, oh, the tax rate's going to go up 6 cents.
Right.
But it's just, we can say different budget things, it's a 6 cent impact to whatever that tax rate is.
And I guess as we sit right now, we know we have the budget process, which is ongoing, but you also have the implementation of the new county budget.
Yes, that's an 18-month for 2018.
So therefore, when this comes forward, it's not as simple as just the values in town and our own budget process. We also have a county budget process that will impose a likely increase based upon their 18-month budgeting.
Right, and it's a short-term increase, so it's something that the selectmen, fortunately, because we have a healthy fund balance, the selectmen may be able to balance that one blip. But that's for next November. Next November. And what I can point out too is we had the recent abatement that the board approved for the Nike building, the EIP, and we based 2017 at 87% equalization based on our best estimate at the time, and it came in at 86.6, so we did save some money.
That works out. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Does anybody here have any questions on the equalization rate? I know it's a little more complicated, but. Okay. Eversource easement.
This is just an easement for Eversource Energy over the Van Etten Drive. It's basically the poles.
So can we do that when we haven't accepted the road?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yes, because that has nothing to do with the road as a town road. This is a license to install the poles.
Right. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Can I ask a question? Where are these poles?
Well, they're not actually poles, they're the conduits and the underground wires.
And they show on subdivision plans and other plans here in the town office where they would have been located.
Right. Because utility never turns over that material to the town. they maintain ownership of the wires and all that
They
permanently.
have a license to keep it there.
Was the genesis of this that the transformers were not properly located?
No.
And that's why,
No, this is a routine that happens with every subdivision.
thank you.
Okay,
And I believe, Laura, did you have a question?
It was basically the same question. Will it just follow along the road, the existing road?
It is not within the roadway itself, it's
They're
along the
underground.
right of way.
But it's not going to be going across the wet meadow or?
No, they're not.
No, they're all in and they're underground.
That's.
The existing
It's
utilities serving it.
all underground, that's what she thought, she was thinking real poles.
okay.
I move to approve the easement consent for Van Eden Drive to Eversource Energy.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Before we go any further, did we receive any bids on the Willowbrook side of things? I thought we had some indication that bids were going to be opened yesterday. No?
No, I don't believe so.
It's the seventh.
Okay.
I don't know what it was put out at.
All right,
No,
not
the
yesterday.
pre-bid was, I think they're due the 15th?
Okay, so bids are not in yet.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
they,
bids are not in.
That's
They're not
fine,
in yet.
okay, no problem.
Juan, I just need your signature on that one. By the arrow. I'll fill out and notarize the rest. 15th or 18th?
I think it's a 15.
Okay, veterans credit.
This is for a resident on Sage Lane for the regular veterans credit, and he qualifies based on years of service and New Hampshire residency.
Motion.
I move to approve the veterans credit for the resident of 11 Sage Lane in the amount of $500.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, proposed warrant articles.
Okay, and this is just the beginning of the list, and I've got a couple other ideas, things that are going to go on. What I've done for the board is that separate sheet to show what the impact would be for the articles. So we have the article for the library bond interest, which is part of the library bond article, which would be 8 cents. The net budget at this point is $3.39, which is the current town tax rate is like $3.38.
Yeah. Oh, and that includes town portion only and not school, right?
Correct,
Okay.
right. The fire vehicle, which was recommended in the report from MRI, $35,000, with those funds coming from the ambulance SRF. Deposits into the road improvement fund and at whatever the board decided from fund balance. The ambulance billing, which is a net zero, that comes out of the ambulance fund, that's the required, it's approximately $3,000. An article for exterior repairs to the town office of $35,000, which is mostly replacing all of the wood trim with the plastic trim to stop the rotting. Police equipment CRF at $2,500, which is up from the $2,000 as recommended by the board at the last meeting. $60,000 for replacement of the Crasco Field brick building. And the board would have, it has an option when I write that article up, whether or not you want that by taxation or have it come out of the recreation revolving fund. That could be a board decision. Transfer station deposits again from fund balance, and the town equipment CRF from fund balance. $75,000 for the fire station roof. And then the other articles that we've briefly talked about, authorizing Keno. An article, which is not on your list, for an engineering study for the fire department, for design and engineering for the new building, to at least get that planned. And then I met with the trustees of the trust funds last Friday, and they are recommending or requesting that we discontinue the mosquito control CRF. It has very little money in it. We haven't used it at all. I talked with Swamp Inc., which does our mosquito control, that should we have a Triple E or a West Nile, what the expenses would be with a spraying. What they said is what they've been doing for us on other times is at no cost, doing a perimeter field spraying, and they would do that for all the town properties as well, but not a complete town-wide spray. But they wouldn't charge us for an emergency. They actually said that the instances of West Nile and Tripoli are decreasing. They didn't find that as a huge issue. Discontinue the Portsmouth Ave CRF. That is the balance from the initial Portsmouth Avenue project, and just lapse that. It has to like discontinue and then appropriate in, but discontinue that one and appropriate into the general road improvement fund, just to eliminate. They're paying fees per fund, so they're trying to like shrink these things down.
Okay.
So discontinuing the Portsmouth Ave and just putting that into the general road maintenance one. The trustees also requested an article to increase the stipend of the trustee of the trust fund's bookkeeper from $1,000 to $1,500. And then an article that the auditors have told us we need to do is to appropriate $21,199 and change from fund balance to the road improvement CRF. And what that is the Dearborn Road project came in under budget. We have to expend all of the $800,000 of the bond first as a part of the bond requirement. And so we spending that down, and the money we withdrew from the road maintenance CRF to finish Dearborn and Caswell has $21,199 left under the capital project. So that needs to be returned to that trust fund. And the only way to do it is through a warrant article. And one of the other questions I need to have, this was another warrant article that I wanted to see if the board wanted to put on. We talked about the RSA 79E options that are out there, and whether or not the board wants to do the enabling legislation to grant tax relief for improvements made for increased storm surge, sea level rise, extreme precipitation resilience, and the coastal resilience incentive zones. That if people were to do something to protect their properties under that, there would be tax relief. They wouldn't be taxed on the improvement they made. But it's only the enabling legislation to authorize, then the board, each individual then has to apply. And so cases are done case by case, but this opens the town for that opportunity. And then the other one that, so that we can move forward with advertising, is for the library bond article. If the board is going to wants that as a selectmen's article, or they want to turn around and have the trustees get the 25 signatures.
Okay, and
It's kind of fast, sorry.
And I wanted to add one other, which is an engineering study for the fire department.
Yep, I said that.
Oh, you did say that?
Yep.
Okay.
It's those new hearing aids aren't working good enough. Right, and I've estimated that at $75,000 for the complete engineering study, design engineer.
Okay, all right, good.
So if the board is happy with that list so far, I'll put text to them all and create a draft warrant.
Okay. I know that we have proposed text for the library here tonight. Maybe
Yes.
we can give them some guidance on that.
The text that was provided to me is good.
Except for two things.
Okay,
The project requires an agreement with the church as a landowner and an agreement with the school district as a landowner. Okay?
does that have to be in the bond article?
Well, what I'm thinking is that we want our bond to be conditional on those two things being actually approved, because the project can't happen without them.
May I speak?
Sure.
Can you tell me what specifically you want? I did talk to Pat Walsh, and he said he does not feel that the school board has to put a warrant article. I mean, he's not going there with it, so.
Well, and here's, the church is easier.
Right.
Here you have a separate entity, and you need some form of a legal right to use their property to cross it.
Okay.
Okay, that, whether it be an easement or somehow changing it in fee or something, whatever you determine to be appropriate.
Okay.
But now we go over to the school side.
Mhm.
You have a completely different entity. It's a completely different owner.
Mhm.
And it's asking to appropriate a fairly large amount of money to create an area for parking and probably for reserve septic. You don't know that for sure yet, but it's almost certain. I can't imagine that you are ever going to be able to get, in the area of land that you have left on your site, the ability to have a septic system to handle 100 people and stormwater control. I just can't see it. But we'll leave that to engineers for the final answer, but I just can't see how you would do it.
Mhm.
And so that's school district property.
Mhm.
It's not town property.
Mhm.
And you'd have to have, it's not just an agreement by the school board any more than this town can just make an agreement with any private landowner for the use of town property for something. We have very specific procedures we have to follow to do that. And if we're going to sell something, over to another entity, then we have to get a warrant article to achieve that. And the same as here, right? So I think that he's incorrect.
Okay.
But I mean, it's really crucial to your project.
Right, well, could I meet with you separately to maybe figure out how to approach Pat? Because I've told him what you said, and he just said it's not necessary, and I'm not doing it, so.
Well,
I think that's a decision for the school board, not Pat Walsh,
Well,
to
yeah,
be honest.
okay.
That can be rather forceful, but sometimes you just have to explain. I have a problem with going forward if you don't have that agreement with the school.
Okay, so would this be a transfer agreement? Could I just talk with you separately, or do we need to do this in the?
Well, I think it's a very public issue,
Okay,
and so going to the school board to talk to them and say, I think you've got to deal with this, fellas. I think you really do, because this is an area of your property. When they developed the school the way that they did, and they got state building aid for it, all of that open space was part of that calculation. And now we're talking, I don't know what it is, maybe an acre. It's a fairly large amount where you're looking at having a completely different use of the property. Parking, probably reserve septic, maybe an area to disperse stormwater, I don't know.
okay,
But it's completely inconsistent with the school's use.
okay.
And if the town is to have some legally enforceable rights for its substantial investment, we have to have the legal right to do that. Now, the other thing that concerns me about that is the school's still subject to bond, okay? Now, you can imagine at home, you have a mortgage, okay? And you decide that you'd like to let your neighbor use a portion of your property, and you want to give them legal rights to do so. You think your mortgagee would have something to say about that, the bank?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the same problem that there is here, because there's still that outstanding bond. And I'm not sure that the bondholders would agree to release that area from the servitude of their bond without getting paid for it. And I don't know what that would cost.
Okay.
So those, I think, are the land use issues that have to be turned over to the school. And this is not just Pat blowing it off saying it's fine with me.
Right.
To accommodate the bond hearing notices, our intention had been to hold the bond hearing at the same time as the school's town budget public hearing and the town's budget public hearing. Can I be authorized to at least advertise this as part of that same public hearing time, just in case they get all the stuff done?
I think so. That's a small investment and worth it, so that we're not
Right.
caught with that type of a mistake.
Right, because then it would be moot no matter what.
Yeah. But I really think that the school board has to deal with this in public session and think it through.
Okay.
And I think as they think it through, this is not just, oh, we're building more parking. That we're going to have a joint use agreement or something. It's not that.
It's not, okay, it has to be more than that.
Especially when.
It's going to have septic in it.
Yeah.
If it's just a parking lot that they give you the ability to use, that's.
I really believe that when you sit down with whoever is doing the engineering, they take a look at the current septic system that handles a 3,000-foot building and the church. And then you're saying we're going to handle now a meeting room for 100 to 120 people, right?
Okay, well, the one thing is, our septic system is not connected in any way, shape, or form to the church. The church put in that new system a couple of years ago on our property, there in the corner, and they said it was big enough to accommodate the library expanded. However, we never had any intention of tapping into that for the library. But our septic system still sits out on the back corner of the property.
And of course, that would be lost with the new
Yes, and
addition.
yes, so we need to have, yes, I understand, we need to have the septic looked at. They are talking about the front corner there,
I
so.
I doubt if you're gonna get it to go.
I can't imagine for that amount of volume that small piece of ground is going to be sufficient.
Well, I'll talk to Ron tomorrow.
Dig the hole deeper.
Well, and I realize that part of town has better soils than other parts of town, but not that good.
But if we can at least get that ad rolling, that'll be good.
Yeah.
All right,
I'd
Leonard,
like to make a clarification of Mr. Sanderson's comment of inconsistency relative to the parking. It was my understanding that the school and the library trustees had come to an agreement that it could be mutual. In other words, the school could use that parking as well, so it's not an inconsistency.
Well, that's about use, but the fact is the town would be paying the bill, right?
For
building it.
So you want it to become town land, Paul, is that what you're looking for?
Well, again, it's your project, but what I'm thinking is, how can we expect the town to appropriate money for a substantial improvement like that and not have control over it in some fashion?
Okay.
I don't mind the fact that the school might use it too,
Mhm.
but I can't see how we go and spend X number of dollars on property we don't own.
I believe they had an agreement on maintaining it relative to things like snow plowing.
Okay.
It's already done.
The library was gonna pay for the snow plowing, although that comes out of tax.
Again, okay, but still, it's gonna be many, many thousands of dollars to construct this thing
Mhm.
on property that the town doesn't own. And I think that's a substantial issue to be fixed.
We'll go.
Okay.
okay?
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Well, I think it's important, if you can imagine, if the school came down and said, we'd like to put a school facility on the back of the town hall, then school district voters would be saying, what? You're putting school money towards something on property that you don't control or own or anything else? So you can see the disconnect.
Yeah, I thought the town owned the school property.
No, they're a completely different legal entity.
Totally- Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's why they're separately governed, separately budgeted, they meet separately,
Right.
separate.
Any other comments?
No.
Okay. Anybody have any other business they'd like to bring up tonight?
The only other question on warrant articles from ambulance billing, in our report from MRI, they talked about equipment to go into our existing fire trucks, like iPads and other communications equipment. Would we please consider what that ought to be and maybe get some figures and see what we might do there?
Okay.
That would be the source of funding without taxes.
Anything else?
One other comment on the grant proposal that Karen Mason and I put together end of May, deadline June 1. We finally got a response from the National Endowment for Humanities 4 days ago, and we were denied. There were 23 grants made. They had 68 valid acceptable proposals, so the funding rate was 1 out of 3. They did tell us that we could get copies of the evaluator's proposal, which I have requested, so we'll go through a learning process.
Right.
The other thing relative to history is that I've completed the scanning of volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Hughes family history. I have volumes 5 and 6 out in my car today. Let you get those done up right.
Good. Well, thank you for your effort. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else? All right, let's move on to accounts payable.
Okay, yeah, while we're going into accounts payable, this is the appropriate time. I took the accounts payable and payroll from today to calculate in the expenditures where we sit for the year. because we know we were overspent on snow. And
Right.
We were hoping that we weren't gonna get snow, and we did. And we might even get more. So as of now, looking at the total budget and what we've spent, and not subtracting anything from any of the labor accounts, because those will tap out at 100%. We have 114,868, give or take, so 114,000 or 115,000 that's not spoken for. So today, last night's storm, it's probably a $35,000, $40,000 storm. If we get another one, if we only get one more that's like this, we'll end the year in the black. If we get anything more significant, we're gonna have to look at, and we'll know it for the December 26th meeting, look at a withdrawal from the storm emergency expense account to end in the black.
All right, hopefully that won't happen with the next budget committee.
Oh, I know.
And we have, what, one additional payroll to go?
Yes, but on this 114, what I did is I went through the expenditure report, updated it from today's expenditures and everything, and then determined what was left in each person's budget without consideration of the salary accounts. So like, total executive has $3,220 left. The expenditure report will show 9,000, but that's not, I didn't touch any of the wage lines.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the 114 is without worrying about the next payroll.
Okay. All right, so darn close.
Yeah.
Yeah, scary close, but we're there. We're gonna make it so far.
Made the day.
So, but no more surprises like, can we squeeze this out of this year's budget? The answer is no. The security cameras are paid for, those will be up by the end of the week.
Very good.
An MRI is paid for now, and the elevator is paid.
Okay,
So,
done really well.
don't find any more.
Okay.
No more can we.
Okay, manifest.
Okay, accounts payable. I move we approve the general fund accounts payable in the amount of $347,828.89, of which $180,000 is to the school district.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I move we approve the manifest for the police special revenue fund in the amount of $30,834.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I move we approve a manifest for the fire and safety revolving fund in the amount of $123.79.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And move we approve payroll in the amount of $54,779.21.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Ross, do you sign these?
By the way, I happened to be at the school at about
Need to
1:30
pen that,
this
don't you?
afternoon,
They can run out of here.
and they had the Wreaths Across America that went through town. And it was really quite a spectacle, because they had police cars and fire engines and everything else that went through. And I think about a dozen tractor trailers loaded with these wreaths.
They come through every year, they go down to
Arlington
Hampton
National Cemetery.
and have a little ceremony, then they get on the highway and head south.
So it was really quite something. The school let the school let the kids out, and they were all out there waving flags and everything else, so.
Excellent.
It was nice.
Well, they'll all show up on Stones in Arlington, day after tomorrow, I guess.
Okay, is there any further business anything you'd like to discuss? Well, I'll entertain a motion to.
Move to adjourn.
Second. I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.